Kal Halalyam, La Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of GMS Ruel, who I learned this truth from, and salutations and blessings to you elect out there, starting with the 144,000 on down. So this lesson is dealing with Carthaginians and, Israelites in maritime, trade in general. All right. And this is inspired from this book that I used to own, but I've lost through the years. It's called The Lost 10 Tribes of Israel Found by Stephen M. Collins. And in no way, shape, or form does this book, is this book 100% on point. This book does go off, but this book has a lot of good points, very valid points. And I was reading over it, and there's a large section on Carthage here, so I was inspired through the Spirit to, do a lesson on this. I know the Apostle Tahar did a lesson on it a few months ago. Brothers do lessons on it periodically, but this is good to get into, the history. So let's go. We're going to start on page 135. It says, Israel, the covenant nation, had been present in the eastern Mediterranean for centuries before King David ruled. So the arrival of King Brutus and a fleet of covenant people, i.e. Israelites, from the eastern Mediterranean in Britain in 1103 BC was historically possible. Indeed, who else but the Israelites, who had entered into a covenant relationship with the Most High at Mount Sinai, would so prominently affix the the Hebrew word for covenant to themselves and their territories. Also, unless Brutus's fleet of colonists were predominantly Israelite, why would they allow him to name their new homeland with a word so closely linked with the tribes of Israel, right? Because the word Briton or Britain or British comes from the root barayath, which means covenant, right? British means covenant, man, ish, or ayash is man, right? So it says, a need by Israel to export its growing population via colonizing expeditions is consistent with the biblical promise of the Most High to Abraham to so increase the population of the Israelites that they would be like as the stars of heaven and as the sand which is upon the seashore. Genesis 22:15-17. And that's very true. Let's actually get that scripture. Genesis 22. What was it? Genesis 22:15. Because verse 4 is also good. And the angel of the Lord Yahweh called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time and said, By myself have I sworn, saith the Lord Yahweh, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed, as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. In the NLT it says, I will certainly bless you, I will multiply your descendants, right? Hebrew seed, beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies, right? And in verse 18, this is where Christians have a frenzy. They bug out, right? And through your descendants, all nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me. That's because you have Israelites in all nations of the earth, okay? That doesn't mean the actual heathen are going to be blessed. All right. Even though in the kingdom, after the 1,000-year period, these are the nations, Elam, Ishmael, Moab, the Hamites, they're going to have their own lot. They're going to have their own plot of land, and they will be blessed in that way. But they're not going to, this is specifically dealing with, as it says right here, I'll multiply your descendants beyond number. What does that mean? That means Israel is in all nations. Okay. Back here it says, any people so blessed would regularly need to locate additional territories I read that part, Slakia. Oh no, I didn't. The colonizing expedition, right, Salakia, of Brutus and the Hebrew word BRT, which is Barayath, being placed on ancient Breton, indicates that is precisely what was happening. The above does not deny that the city-states of Tyre and Zidon also had minor or major Salakia concurrent seafaring capacities, since the Israelites, the Tyrians and Sidonians, had long shared a common race, language, and trading relationships. It is possible that when kings Hiram and David sealed a formal alliance between their peoples, navies, etc., they simply formalized the status quo rather than establish something radically new. This creates the possibility, indeed the likelihood, that Israel, Tyre, and Zidon have been cooperating for some time in their overseas endeavors. The fact that the Greeks did not limit the term Phoenicia to the small city-states like Tyre and Zidon, but included the land of Israel in the region they called Phoenicia supports this conclusion. At any rate, the arrival of Israelite settlers in Britain paved the way for its inclusion among the islands or lands of the Israelite Phoenician Maritime Empire, which followed shortly thereafter. It says, unique among the lands inhabited by the Israelite Phoenicians, the island of Britain has retained a name based on the Hebrew word for covenant continuously into the modern era. The BRT root word was also found on Phoenician coins, further indicating that they themselves identified themselves as the covenant people. The Phoenician colony of Carthage also printed the word BRT on its coins. A later chapter will present considerable evidence that the Israelites were the prime founders of the Phoenician colony of Carthage. Therefore, it is not surprising that this significant Hebrew root word, BRT, Barayath, also appears on Carthaginian coins, proclaiming to the world that they were part of the covenant people. The Israelites were proud of being the covenant people. All right, page 136. The Phoenician colony of Carthage was, it's like I just read that. Let's skip down. The word Hebrew down here comes from one of the ancestors of the Israelites whose name was Eber, Genesis 11:14 to 26. Traces the ancestry of Abraham to Eber, right, which is Ibar, which means past, of the past. Several variations of the word Hebrew also appear within the ancient Phoenician Empire. We have already seen that the ancient name of Spain, which was the site of the major Phoenician Israelite colony of Gades, Gadira, was Iberia, right? And that was called the area of Spain and Portugal. That water mass, that whole peninsula was called the Iberian Peninsula. It says also an ancient name of Ireland was Ibirhu or Ibiru. Ancient Gaelic histories record that the ancestors of the Gaelic settlers of Ireland came from Iberia, Phoenicia, Spain. Ancient Ireland was also called Hibernia, a name which also preserved the Hebrew root word Eber or Eber. Note how closely the words Ibiru and Iberu coincide phonetically with the pronunciation of the word Hebrew. Waddell also notes some of the above and includes the Hebrides as a relative or related word representative of the Iberia stock which first peopled the British Isles. The placement of the name of a Hebrew patriarch on Ireland, Spain, and early Britain further confirms that their early settlers were Israelites colonizing these areas during the centuries of the Phoenician Golden Age. Now let me go to page 139. It says the Bible records that Israel became devotees of Baal, the sun god of Tyre and Zidon, during their golden age, and that's true, right? The Carthaginians, they worship Baal. They were idol worshippers. They were completely off. And that's why that empire failed. This is not like a thing like, oh, we were Carthaginians, we were great. A lot of, these were wicked people. Okay, even Hannibal and them, you know, though they had a disdain, not even a disdain, a hatred, a deep-rooted hatred for the Roman Empire. Okay, um, okay, they were still going off. So it says this idolatry had permeated Israel even before the death of Solomon, as he himself worshipped Ashtoreth or Astarte, a Phoenician name for the mother goddess, who was worshipped in many other cultures by other names. Israel's devotion to foreign gods lasted from Solomon until the fall of Israel in about 721 BC. So the fact that BRT covenant people of Panch or Phoenician fame were associated with the mother goddess worship is consistent with biblical accounts. It is clear, nonetheless, that ancient Indian histories referred to the Israelite Empire by the same root words by which they were known to the Mediterranean world. The Greeks knew the Israelites by the term Phoenicia, and the Israelites named themselves the BRT covenant people. Ancient India preserves both root words in the term Panch and the Bharats or Brihats, further linking these root words together is a phrase in an ancient Indian epic, the Vishnu Purana, which states the principal nations of the Bharats are the Kurus and the Abel Panch. That the Israelite Phoenician Empire made a lasting impression in Asia as well as the Mediterranean world indicates that Israel's empire and influence was truly international in scope. It says the record in ancient Indian annals that the Bharat or the BRT Phoenicians brought the whole world under their sway gives added weight to the statement of the Bible that all the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon, and they brought every man his present year by year, right? And that's in the book of Second Chronicles 9, which we can get that 9 and 23. It's actually a very good precept. I'll read it in the NLT. I actually read this at camp last week. I'll start at verse 9. It says, all of King Solomon's drinking cups were solid gold, as were all the utensils in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. They were not made of silver, for silver was considered worthless in Solomon's day. So that speaks volumes to that empire, man. The king had a fleet of trading ships manned by the sailors sent by Hiram or Hiram. Once every 3 years, the ships returned loaded, okay, with gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. So King Solomon became richer and wiser than any other king on earth. Kings from every nation came to consult him and to hear the wisdom of the Most High had given him. Year after year, everyone who visited brought him gifts of silver and gold, clothing, weapons, spices, horses, and mules. Okay, so back here it says, let me go down actually. Go to the next page. Okay, we're going to go to page 201. Right up top, it says, this new colony was planted on the north coast of Africa and given the Hebrew name Kirjath Hadishkath, and that's off. I'm going to get the word actually, which one historian of Carthage translates as new town, and that's what it means. It means new town. The name Kirjath is a Hebrew word for city, and it appears frequently in the Bible. Now we're gonna get how the actual Hebrew was, the as us brothers know, the Paleo Hebrew or the Lashon Kodash. All right, it's found. This word is found in the scripture Job 29:7. When I went out to the gate through the city, when I prepared my seat in the street. Now this word city is Quarath. Not so it's not Kirjath, it's Quarath, and we go down here. We go down here, it says down here the same word is found in Persia and Syriac names of cities. When you skip down, see, Quarath, Chadash, Chadashath, new city, probably Carthage, right? So the word, how you say Carthage is Quarath, which we just showed you, Quarath. Oh, let me search. Why don't you let me search? No, let's type in new. Just to get the full word. Chadash, not H-A, but it's C-H-A-A, Chadash. So Quarath, Chadash. That's Carthage. That's how you say Carthage. Okay? New city. It says, and it appears frequently in the Bible. Israelite cities in the Bible. I'm going to skip down. The Israelites who settled Kirjath or Quarath came from the kingdom of Israel, the 10-tribed Israelite nation to the north of the Jewish kingdom of Judah. As discussed in the previous chapter, Judah was ruled at that time by King Jehoshaphat, who outlawed Baalism in Judah since the drought was on Baal worshippers, and Judah supported a huge influx of Israelites during the drought. It is clear that Judah was not affected by the drought which plagued Israel and the city-states to its north. Since Judah was not afflicted by the drought, it had no need to join Israel in founding this new colony. Now, again, this could be Judah. This does make sense what this person just wrote, the author. But again, we know that Jake was everywhere, so I'm not going to subscribe to the idea that it was only the Northern Kingdom, but I will say that's a good argument, what he wrote. It says, but the point is, these were Israelites. It says, since the drought, we read that part. It says, since Judah was not affected by the drought, it had no need to join Israel in founding this new colony. Therefore, Kirjath or Quarath Chadash was primarily an Israelite settlement. Since both Israel and Judah spoke Hebrew, it is easy for a modern reader to misunderstand the origins of Kirjath, unless it is realized that its founders were Hebrews from the northern kingdom of Israel, not the southern kingdom of Judah. While the Hebrew word Kirjath or Quarath was the name given to this new city by its inhabitants, the Greeks called it Carchedon, and the Romans called it Carthago. Both Greece and Rome were perennial enemies of Carthage. Since our history of the ancient world comes mostly from Greco-Roman sources, we today refer to this ancient Hebrew city as Carthage, the name given it by its enemies. Right? Many historians who have written books about Carthaginian history have commented that the chief magistrates of Carthage were called Shophatim, a Hebrew word for judges. Gilbert and Colette Charles Pickard make this observation. The executive power was shared by two Shophatim. This title, which the Romans translated as Suffates, means judges. It was the title borne by the elders of the people. Now we're going to jump to 204. It says, a few Carthaginian rulers did call themselves kings in the years after the fall of Israel. One Carthaginian leader with the title king was named Malchus. Malchus is another Hebrew name and was still being used by the Hebrews at the time of Yahushua, John 18:10. A prominent member of the Hamilcars, a ruling family of Carthage, bore a famous Hebrew name. The historian Alfred Church noted one of the Hamilcars bore the surname of Barca, and Barca is the same as the Hebrew Barak. Okay. One observation by Church illustrates how deep is the misconception that all Hebrew-speaking people of that time were Jews. He noted These resemblances of Carthaginian and Hebrew names are very interesting and show us how close was the kindred between the Jews and the Phoenician tribes, enemies to each other, though they mostly were. Um, Let me see. Let's read here. It says Carthage did have direct dominion in an area which few modern readers would ever have guessed, ancient America. Ancient historical records support this assertion. In his book Atlantic Crossings Before Columbus, Frederick Pohl cites two ancient Greek accounts of a land beyond Gibraltar, which is in Spain, which can only be ancient America. The first account is from the writings of Aristotle and reads as follows: in the sea outside the Pillars of Hercules, they say that an island was found by the Carthaginians, a wilderness having wood of all kinds and navigable rivers remarkable for various kinds of fruit and many days' sailing distance away. When the Carthaginians, who were masters of the Western Ocean, observed that many traders and other men, attracted by the fertility of the soil and the pleasant climate, frequented it because of its richness, and some resided there, they feared that knowledge of the land would reach other nations, and a great concourse to it of men from various lands of the earth would follow. Therefore, lest the Carthaginian empire itself should suffer injury, and the dominion of the sea be wrested from their hands, the Senate of Carthage issued a decree that no one under penalty of death should thereafter sail thither, and they massacred all who resided there. Aristotle's reference to a wealthy Carthaginian land many days' sailing distance across the Western Ocean could only indicate ancient North America. Aristotle lived in the 4th century BC, a time when Greek knowledge of the world beyond Gibraltar was limited to whatever the Carthaginians wanted them to know or whatever Greek spies could ascertain from Carthaginian sources. Perhaps drunken Carthaginian sailors on shore leave. The only land many days' sailing time west of Gibraltar, the Pillars of Hercules, large enough to have navigable rivers, fertile soil, forests, and a pleasant climate, was ancient America. To safeguard their monopoly on such a rich territory, Carthage used every means at its disposal to keep others from sharing its resources. This makes it all the clearer why Carthage was determined to keep the Greeks and Romans out of the Atlantic. They did not want those nations to tap the riches of North America. The second account is from Diodorus, a Greek historian of the 1st century BC. It is as follows: over against Africa lies a very great island in the vast ocean, many days' sail from Libya. Westward, the soil there is very fruitful, a great part thereof is mountainous, but much likewise is a plain, which is the most sweet and pleasant part, for it is watered with several navigable rivers. The mountainous part of the country is clothed with very large woods, and all manner of fruit trees and springs of fresh water. There you may have game enough in hunting all sorts of wild beasts. It says, obviously, the very great island westward in the same latitude as Libya was ancient North America, with its forests, mountains, and vast inner fertile plain watered by navigable rivers. When one follows the latitude of the sailing ports of ancient Libya westward, one comes to the area of the southern portion of the modern United States of America. Notice the specificity of the above account. It was written after Carthage had fallen to the Romans, a time when Greco Roman navigators finally gained access to the Atlantic Ocean. A Roman writer of the 2nd century AD, Claudius Aelianus, also commented that the existence of a marvelous land to the west was a definite tradition of the Carthaginians or Phoenicians of Gades or Gades. The presence of Carthaginian coins and artifacts in North America verifies that the rich Carthaginian territory across the Atlantic was indeed ancient North America. Dr. Barry Fell's book, Saga America, documents the findings of Carthaginian coins, artifacts, and inscriptions in the American states of Alabama, Connecticut, New York, Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Nevada. Dr. Fell, the founder of the Epigraphic Society, notes that Carthaginian coins found in America date primarily to the period of the 4th and 3rd century BC. He postulates that during the above period, Carthage's gold and much of the timber for the construction of its naval vessels came from ancient North and South America. During the Punic Wars, ancient America likely became the refuge for an unknown number of Carthaginians fleeing from Roman conquerors. The discovery in Georgia of an atlatl stone, a spear hurling device with a Punic Carthaginian inscription from the 2nd century BC, supports such a conclusion. Dr. Fell confirms that the continued Hebraic content of the Carthaginian language by stating that he deduced the meaning from corresponding words in Biblical Hebrew. The translation of this Punic inscription by Dr. Fell is supported by the analysis of a Semitic languages scholar, Michael Skupin. Right now, page 217, it says that presence of Carthaginian coins and artifacts in North America verifies that the rich Carthaginian territory across the Atlantic was indeed ancient America. North America, Dr. Barry Fell's book, Saga America. Hold on, we read that part. Salaki, man. Should overrun sometimes. It says, here it says down here, Dr. Fell further observed in Saga America, the Punic language can be read without difficulty as it is similar to ancient Hebrew. Right? So Punic was just another way of saying Hebrew, pretty much. It was just a different language. Carthage was famous in the ancient world for its wealth. One source states that Carthage was beyond doubt the richest city of antiquity. No wonder they exploited the resources of the New World. While shutting out all rivals for a time, Carthage had a monopoly on the wealth of the New World. As an interesting digression, the ancient legends that the oceans were full of terrifying creatures and mystical threats may have resulted from Carthaginian disinformation campaigns to make potential rivals afraid of sailing the world's oceans. These maritime myths could have been perpetrated on the Greeks and Romans and through them passed on to later European civilizations. Now let me skip down. Go here. This is a good map. It says Carthaginian maritime trading routes. All right. So Jake, man, look, Jake was everywhere. As the blessing states it. So we're gonna get into some of the ships. The ancient Greek historian geographer Herodotus, right, that the Carthaginians mounted an expedition of 30,000 men and women in 60 ships in 5 to 480 BC and sent them westward into the Atlantic toward an unknown destination. Mr. Davies observes aptly that this resembles a migration more than a mere expedition. Assuming the Greek account to be accurate, the Carthaginian expedition averaged 500 persons per ship. The presence of Carthaginian coins, artifacts, and inscriptions in North America, ancient North America, reveal where ancient Carthaginian colonial expeditions such as this one headed. Mr. Davis further notes, in Roman times, the capabilities of Carthaginian ships were greatly increased. Some exceed 1,000 tons and were therefore much larger than the English boats that crossed the Atlantic in the 17th century. The Mayflower weighed 180 tons. So that's crazy, 1,000 tons. All right. That's a lot of weight, man. All right. So here, down here, page 222. In the 7th and 6th centuries BC, the Phoenicians sailed large ocean-going vessels called hippos, which could remain at sea for a year. These hippos may give us an indication of the size of the Israelite Phoenician ships in the days of Kings Hiram and Solomon, whose fleet in the 10th century BC undertook 3-year voyages. Given the considerable evidence that the Carthaginians were a colony of the old Hebrew kingdom of Israel, it can be concluded that Israelites were present in ancient America through most, if not all, of the first millennium BC, initially under the auspices of Israel's Phoenician Empire, and subsequently that of Carthage. Indeed, one reason why Carthage dominated the Atlantic Ocean for centuries is that they inherited Phoenician sea charts and navigational knowledge, right? It's because them Tyrese Zidon, them Canaanites, them Hamites, they were expert in maritime, in the navy. Okay, so they understood about merchant ships and all that. But Jake, Israel is the spice of life, man, the salt of life, right? So when a lot of us linked up with the heathen in maritime trade, you know, Jake learned things, and then Jake did their own thing, right? And then they excelled, right? Because that's Jake. But these Hamites, they had it, man. They had that knowledge. Why do you think like King Solomon, he hired Hiram, which was a Hamite, Hiram Abith, which these Masons, they base their whole credo, or their, not credo, but their whole philosophy pretty much over this guy, among other things, obviously. But he's an important figure in Freemasonry. It says, indeed, one reason why Carthage dominated the Atlantic Ocean for centuries is that they inherited. Right, I read that for Salakia. Earlier, it was seen that the people of Israel referred to themselves as the covenant people and used the Hebrew word barayath. The Carthaginians were also known to place the same Hebrew word on their coins. This indicates an awareness on the part of the Carthaginians that they were descendants of the covenant people of old Israel. While Carthage eventually did degenerate, their culture was previously at a higher level. We have already seen the evidence of Levitical priestly customs in the customs of Carthage, and also that Carthage at first honored El, a common name for Israel's God. Now, all El means is that's where you get Allah from, AHLA, which means power. And you have scholars that they say, oh, they call him Elohim, which Elohim is not his name. Elohim is just the plural, Allahayim, which means judges or powers or angels, okay, or gods, if so you can understand. It says the Carthaginians initially continued the Hebrew custom of forbidding graven images and made small monuments were which were at first just plain stones. In so doing, the Carthaginians initially adhered to the second of the Ten Commandments given to Moses and the God ordained method of building an altar. It is also apparent that the Carthaginians were not always degenerate. Gilbert and Colette Charles Pickard note the following about them. Little indulgence was shown to the weakness of the flesh. The religious reform of the 5th century had purified. Page 226. Concerning the size of Carthage, the Roman historian Strabo maintained that the town alone had a population of 700,000. During Carthaginian rule, it has been estimated that only 100,000 could live within the city walls of Carthage, and that another 100,000 lived in its suburbs. Since the area within the city walls constituted a defensive redoubt, it is not certain how many lived outside the city walls during times of peace. One ancient account records that the circumference of Carthage and its related suburbs was 23 miles. Since Carthage's agricultural land was very productive, it could easily have supported a large number of people. It was discussed earlier that Herodotus recorded that the Carthaginians sent colonizing expeditions of 30,000 men and women westward into the Atlantic. If Carthage was large enough to mount colonizing expeditions of that size, it is reasonable to assume that Carthage itself had hundreds of thousands in its population and that the entire Punic culture numbered in the millions. Given all these natural strengths, what caused Carthage to become one more in a long line of fallen wood world empires? There are several reasons. One obvious factor is the series of debilitating wars which Carthage fought with Rome. Another is the fact that Carthage came to increasingly rely on foreign mercenaries to fight in its battles, and the influx of foreigners surely contributed to mixed loyalties and internal tensions. There is also a deeper cause since Carthage was infected with the plague of Baalism and its socially destructive practices. Carthage also rotted from within. See, so Jacob's going off, right? It says her rule over the other Punic cities became so arrogant and unbearable that when Rome finally destroyed the city of Carthage, many of Carthage's fellow Punic cities allied themselves with Rome to assist in Carthage's destruction. One major campaign of the Punic Wars will be recounted as significant for purposes of this book. In the Second Punic War, the famous Carthaginian general Hannibal also succeeded in destroying Rome. Hannibal, whose name included a derivative of the god Baal, Hani Baal, led a famous march over the Alps and warred against the Romans on their home soil of Italy for approximately 12 years. He destroyed entire Roman armies and pillaged Italy almost at will. Hannibal's high point came in 216 BC when his army slew 70,000 Romans in a single battle at Cannae. Inexplicably, Hannibal did not press home his advantage and attack Rome at that time. If he had done so, the course of history might have been altered with Rome. And why did not happen? Because it's Yahweh Bashem Yahushai's movie that shows you that fucking place Rome could have been taken out. But that was the fourth beast. It had to come to play. All right, it had to come to pass and rule. You know, but that's prophecy. That's exactly why. Um, might have been altered with Rome becoming a conquered province of the Carthaginian Empire. However, that opportunity slipped away and Rome recovered to win the Second Punic War. When Hannibal later had to flee for his own life, he sought refuge for a time in Armenia. It is interesting that Hannibal felt Armenia would offer him a refuge. It says, as mentioned above, page 228, the Punic culture and language survived until 400 AD when its Hebrew roots were still recognizable by early Christian writers. This is significant as it means that there were still many Punic Israelites in North Africa at the time of Yahushai. The statement in Acts 2 and 10 that people from North Africa, Libya, were present among the devout who were attending the Feast of Weeks takes on a new meaning. These North Africans may have been scattered Jews, but they could also have been Punic Israelites who still worshipped the power of Israel. During the life of Yahushua Mashiach, Simon of Cyrene, an area of Libya, was made to carry the cross of Yahushua on his way to Golgotha. Simon was apparently making a pilgrimage from Cyrenaica, a Punic region, to Jerusalem to attend the Passover that coincided with Yahushua's crucifixion. Acts 11:20 and 13:1 also indicate that some early Christians were from Punic regions. Where did most of the Carthaginians go when Carthage fell to the Romans? It is highly unlikely that all the Carthaginians stayed in Carthage for the last futile battle against the Romans, since Carthage had a network of colonies and trading posts. Many likely fled from the Romans in the same way the Israelites earlier fled from Assyria. Many Carthaginians, with the means to do so, undoubtedly chose to evade the Roman conquerors by relocating elsewhere. Some may have sailed Carthage's old maritime routes to America. Historical facts support this conclusion. Okay, so page 236. When the Romans sacked Carthage, whatever priceless knowledge existed in Carthage's libraries was destroyed. Apparently, only one literary work survived, a 28-volume treatise by a Carthaginian ruler on the breeding and management of cattle, the care of poultry and bees, the planting of forest trees, and the treatment of the vine and olive. See, so that's Jake. That's stewards. They were stewards. So that shows you that's a 28 volume, which was one literary work that survived. See, so these guys were high level, man, but they were wicked. They were worshiping Baal. So imagine when Israel is worshiping their power. It's as if the Romans had heeded the agricultural knowledge in these volumes. North Africa might still have the wheat fields where there is now only desert. Okay, it says there was one other unusual but fascinating piece of evidence supporting a conclusion that Carthaginians were present in ancient America. This evidence involves the likelihood that elephants were introduced into the Americas during the Carthaginian period and that they were present in the New World until colonial times. George Carter, professor emeritus of Texas A&M University, has written in the Epigraphic Societal or Society occasional publications that a number of American Indian tribes preserve legends of elephants living in North America. He wrote, the most striking ones were told to Cotton Mather in New England and to Thomas Jefferson in Washington. The Indians told Jefferson that elephants could still be seen in the Great Lakes region. Carter also notes that there is ample evidence of elephant motifs in ancient America. He writes, America is liberally sprinkled with pictures of elephants painted on a cave in Washington state, in the rock art of the West, in Mayan glyphs, where elephant heads appear as affixes at least 14 times. In a Mexican codex, it was noted that a priest sacrificing a man wore an elephant headdress. Dr. Barry Fell's book, America BC, also notes elephant motifs in both North and South America. His book shows an Ecuadorian artifact depicting an elephant with an accompanying North African script from the latter half of the 3rd century before Christ, and also depicts an image of an African elephant on an ancient artifact unearthed near Davenport, Iowa. Ancient rock carvings depicting elephants have also been documented in New Mexico and Oklahoma, confirming that inhabitants of ancient America were obviously familiar with elephants. Okay, so that's pretty much that from that book. You know, some good information. Now this is just from Wikipedia, right? History of Jews in Carthage. Now, look, Carthage, and it shows you right here in ancient Hebrew. That's crazy, man. Right? Quarath, it's like a Quarath Chadash or Kadashath, right? Really, it's just Kadash, right? Chadash here, right? Chadash. So Quarath Kadash, new city, was a city in North Africa. Though Josephus associated the city's foundation with Jews, and some scholars have conjectured that small groups of Jews may have been present in Carthage as early as the Punic era. The earliest evidence of Jewish presence in the area dates to the 2nd century BC. You know, they gotta have their little spiel. But as you see, Josephus even recorded that there were Israelites, okay, all over there. So you see here Iberia, right, which is Spain, Portugal, Iberian Peninsula, Israelites all over, man. You know. Now let me get this. This is a Carthaginian coin, right? You got Carthaginian coins here, and as you see, this is what they call Punic, but this is just Lashon Kodash. This is Hebrew, right? Brothers can, you brothers know, you can see the Hebrew, right? It's just bad quality, but you see the consonants, the letters. So this is what they mean when they say Punic. Now, when you type in Punic, the Punic language, also called Phoenicia, Punic, or Carthaginian, is an extinct variety of the Phoenician language, a Canaanite language of the Northwest Semitic branch of the Semitic languages. All madness, spilling. But as you see, look at this. You're going to see one of the Tripolitania Punic inscription in both Latin, so Latin's on top, and Punic at the bottom. Now, when we zoom in, right, you see the Latin on top, obviously, but look at the bottom, the Punic. This is a lot of these consonants. This is Hebrew. You see na, you see pa, you see tha. Okay, you see ba, you see I, right? So this is Punic Hebrew. All right. So that's pretty much it. That's all I got. I hope you brothers were edified, brothers and sisters were edified. With that, I want to say, Call Halalim La Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Racha HaKodash, double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops at GMS who rule well. Shalom to the elect.